people think success comes from action, more effort, more moves, more decisions. In reality, most damage comes from unnecessary actions. Doing something feels productive, doing nothing feels irresponsible. But in markets and in life, inaction is often the highest skill decision you can make. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Taha and I've been deploying capital for many years now and have been able to achieve considerable returns. In this video, I'm going to explain how I decide when not to act. Not because I'm unsure, but because acting would reduce long-term outcomes. This isn't advice, this is simply how I make decisions with my own capital and time. Why actions are overrated. Actions has a bias. It makes you feel in control. In uncertain environment, control is mostly an illusion. Markets don't reward activity, they reward judgment. Most people feel pressure to act because doing nothing feels like missing out. That pressure doesn't come from logic, it comes from comparison. You see other people trading, posting wins, talking confidently, running big businesses, and you confuse visibility with confidence, so you act. Professionals don't act because something is happening, they act because the conditions are right. They're not the same thing. The cost of unnecessary action. Every action has a cost. Even when it looks small, there's a transaction cost, there's an opportunity cost, there's a cognitive cost. But the biggest cost is decision degradation. Every unnecessary action reduces clarity. You add noise, you add emotion, you add complexity. Over time, this compounds. Not positively. Most people don't blow up from one bad decision. They bleed from many small unnecessary ones. Doing nothing avoids that bleed. When doing nothing is the default. My default state is not action, it's inaction. Everything starts as a no, and it has to earn its way to a yes. If conditions are unclear, if risk is undefined, if expectations are extreme, I do nothing. Not because I'm afraid, because patience has positive expected value. Time reveals information. Action often hides it. Doing nothing lets uncertainty resolve. Clarity is the trigger, not opportunity. Now, most people act when they see opportunity. I act when I see clarity. Opportunities without clarity is temptation. Clarity without opportunity is preparation. That overlap is very rare. That's where actions make sense. If nothing is clear, I wait. Waiting is not passive. It's intentional. It's an active decision to preserve optionality. Optionality is undervalued. Optionality means the ability to act later. With better information, doing nothing preserves optionality. Doing something consumes it. Once capital is deployed, once time is committed, once attention is locked in, your choices narrow. Optionality disappears quietly. Most people give up optionality too early, then spend years trying to get it back. Doing nothing feels uncomfortable. That discomfort is information. If I feel pressure to act, I stop and ask why. Is it because conditions improved or because I'm bored? Is it because risk decreased or because I feel behind? Most forced action come from emotional discomfort, not analytical necessity. Discomfort does not mean action is required. Often it means restraint is. Patience versus paralysis. Now, there's an important distinction that gets misunderstood. Patience is not paralysis. Paralysis comes from fear. Patience comes from discipline. Paralysis avoids decision. Patience delays decision until conditions justify action. The difference is intent. When I do nothing, it's not because I don't know what to do. It's because I know exactly what would justify action. And those conditions aren't present. That clarity removes anxiety because I'm not stuck. I'm baiting deliberately. Doing nothing is not always correct. It becomes a mistake when clarity is present and you still hesitate. That's different. If risk is defined, if expectations are reasonable, if all downside is controlled and you still don't act, that's not patience, that's avoidance. The goal is not inactivity, the goal is correct timing. Most people struggle with this because they never defined their action threshold. So everything feels urgent. When thresholds are clear, timing becomes obvious. People ask how much confirmation I need before acting. The answer surprises them. Not certainty, just sufficient clarity. I don't wait for perfect information. I wait for uncertainty to narrow. That usually looks like fewer variables, not more data. When a thesis becomes simpler instead of becoming more complex, that's a signal. If new information keeps adding conditions, that's not confirmation, that's fragility. I act when the story compresses, not when it expands. Why inactivity compounds? This part is counterintuitive. Inactivity compounds better than activity. Every unnecessary action introduces error. Error accumulates. Every avoided mistake preserves capital. Preserved capital compounds. Most people think compounding comes from doing more. It usually comes from doing less. Professionals aren't inactive because they're cautious. They're inactive because they understand how fragile outcomes are. Survival creates optionality. Optionality creates asymmetric outcomes. This way of thinking isn't limited to markets. It applies to businesses, to hiring, to partnerships, to major life decisions. Most damage in life doesn't come from missed opportunities. It comes from premature commitment, oversizing effort, oversizing confidence, oversizing action. Good decision makers wait for clarity, then move decisively. Bad decision makers move early, then justify it later. Here's a rule I use. If acting feels exciting, I'm usually early. If acting feels boring, it's often correct. Boring means that the uncertainty has already been reduced. Excitement usually means it hasn't. I don't want adrenaline, I want inevitability. I want decisions that make sense quietly. Doing nothing is not passive, it's a skill. It requires confidence without ego. It requires patience without fear. It requires restraint without hesitation. Most people never develop this skill because it's invisible. No one applauds restraint, but it's the reason professionals last. In future videos, I'll continue breaking down how decisions are made. If you're interested in thinking clearly, understanding uncertainty, you'll probably enjoy what's coming.